Good morning, everybody, and welcome to NAMM 2015. My name is David Doss, and I'll be giving you a clinic teaching session on modern music production workflows. I personally think that this is one of the most exciting times in history to be making music, with so many possibilities at our fingertips. Plugins, interface choices, control surfaces, other tools, and in day-to-day work as a composer and a producer and a songwriter for film and TV, Digital Performer is a best-in-class program that gives you full flexibility over MIDI recording, audio recording and editing, mixing, modern music assembly, and delivery. One of the things I love most about watching fellow pros work in DP is it's such a deep program. There's so much under the surface and so many ways to get at your music and manipulate it exactly the way you want. I always find like I learned something, and hopefully today you will too. What I'd love to do today is take this recent song session of mine and I'll deconstruct it for you and show you some of the compositional and production and mixing details and how it was all put together. This song is by Rachel Yamagata. She is a singer-songwriter extraordinaire, and she and I wrote this song together for a feature film. And thanks to the miracles of technology, she and I never actually met in person to work on it. Everything was done through the internet by shuttling files back and forth. And everything was done in our 2 home studios. The song started as just an idea I had in my head. I recorded it into my iPhone using voice memos. I emailed it over to her, and I got some feedback from her. Do you want to work on it? And then what can we do with it? And we started the conversation like that. And she would bounce ideas back to me, and I'd incorporate them into my master Digital Performer file until we felt like we got the song to where it needed to be, and then she recorded her vocals. As you're going to see, the writing and production and mixing process are really intertwined, not so much like the old days where we used to write a song and then go into the studio and record it, and then hire a mixer to mix it. Now, it can, if you like, all happen kind of simultaneously and all together. The process of working on this song took about a month. And what I'd love to do is now condense a month into 20 or 25 minutes and show you how this thing was put together. So before we start, let me give you a quick listen to a piece of the song, and then we'll start from scratch and put it together.
What if I run away when up in flames? How long can I hold on? Everything's changed.
Okay, so that's what we're about to create. The first thing I'm going to do, my original session lies here, and I've got it all in a track folder called Original Session. I'm going to close that up, and I'm going to disable it. What this does is decouple it from the CPU. So all plugins and everything else I was doing, all the virtual instruments, they're now disabled. They're still there if I ever need to get back to them, but they're not using any more CPU. And now I can just start afresh in the same file and start building. I've set up an 8-measure section out here on the right, and I put some memory cycle points around them, basically repeat bars, so we can loop this thing and get into a groove and start creating. Okay, the first and the most fundamental signature piece of this song is a very simple guitar riff. Now, I don't have my guitar here, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import the original guitar that I recorded. It's super, super simple. And as I play it for you, you'll see that this is absolutely dry. This went from my guitar, plugged straight into a MOTU interface, direct, nothing on it. This is what it sounds like, virgin. Okay, the entire song is based on this little riff here. So what I'd like to do is start to bring it to life and do something cool with it. I am going to go over to my mixer. Let's get rid of the original session. Let's bring up our new tracks. And I can see it's playing right here. I'm going to insert a guitar rig on it to start building some interesting effects. Guitar rig is a guitar amp emulation and stompbox emulation plugin. I'm going to go to Components, go over to Pitch, and let's start by adding an octaver. And then maybe a little bit of resochord to add some upper harmonic interest. But I've got to tune it to the key of my song. You can see we're peaking a little bit, so I'll turn it down. It's had some interesting space around it. Psych delay is an esoteric delay that can do some crazy things. It's tempo synced. Turn the dry wet down. And you can hear in just 30 seconds, we've transformed this boring thing into this aural symphony. Much more interesting. There's a lot more we can do with this now. Okay, so that's a basic guitar part, and it's sounding pretty interesting. The next thing I'd love to do, I love to think not just in terms of specific instruments, but in characters. Next thing I'd love to do is add some drums to this. And I'm going to pull up MOTU's excellent Mach 5 sampler. I'd love something like a big, roomy Bonham-style drum kit for this. I have just that kind of sample set apart for this. It's called Roomy Kit, and I can play it from my MIDI keyboard down here. There we go. Let me turn it up a little bit, and I'm going to drop this into record and overdub a MIDI drum part. Great, I got my part recorded. It's a little bit loose, as you heard. It's not quite perfect. I'd like to tweak that and get it just right. I'm going to come over to my mixing console, and I'm going to use a quantize plugin. The beauty of using plugins in the mixing console is that they're non-destructive. What that means is my original MIDI data up there in yellow is not going to be changed. This quantize will work only on playback, which gives me the freedom later in the mix. If I ever need to come back and tweak these settings to be something else, I can. So, I'd like to quantize this drum part to the 16th note, but I don't want it to be perfect. If it's perfect, it's not going to sound human anymore. So I'm going to turn the strength down to, let's say, 50%. What that's going to do is take every note and move it 50% closer to the grid, but not right on the grid. So it preserves a little bit of variation in there. I'll also throw in just a little bit of swing. That way, the drums aren't quite laying firmly on the grid. They're slanted a little bit, and they have a little bit of a groove to them, and they're kind of pushing behind the beat. You can feel we've got this really heavy plodding beat here, and that's going to work really well for this song. Okay, this song is already so full in the low end, we might not even need a bass guitar. We'll see how it goes. I have to confess, I'm a little bit of an organization freak. When I start working on a session that gets very large, it's hard to keep everything straight and know where everything is at once. So let's do a little bit of organization. This track right here is the MIDI track where I recorded that drum part that I just played. It's set to trigger Mach 5.3 instance 1, which is right here. This is a virtual instrument track, which is holding Mach 5. Now, so these tracks are effectively a pair. What I'd like to do is rename them. I'm going to call them both drums, and I'm going to select both of them and hold down the T key, which gives me an instantaneous group, and give it a color. That way these tracks are set apart from all the others. And let's do the same thing with our electric guitar. And we'll give that a different color since it's a different instrument family. Okay, I feel better now, and we can move on with creating the song. I was half kidding a second ago about not needing a bass. This song might not need a bass, but after some experimentation, I found that I really did like a second bass part under it. So I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier. Since I don't have my bass here, I'm going to import my original bass file. Again, straight DI, no effects, no compression, no nothing. And let's have a listen to it, soloed, and see what it needs. That track is going to work great, but it's not really the smoothest. You can tell that you can see it visually. You can maybe also hear it aurally. The peaks are loud, and then as the long notes decay, they go down pretty far. And my problem is this may not sit in the mix well. You may hear the attacks, and then the rest of it may disappear. So what I'm going to do is smooth that out by using a little bit of the Masterworks leveler that comes with Digital Performer. It's an emulation of the classic LA2A plugin. I'm going to choose a preset called Bass Rider. It's a pretty heavy preset. It's taking off about 10 dB of gain, but then it's making up for it. So now I have a bass guitar that, let's say, for example, used to go from 0 to 100% of dynamic range. The compressor is now squeezing it, so let's say it goes from 0 to 50% of dynamic range, and then it's making up the gain and boosting it. So now we've got a bass part that goes from 50 to 100%, for example. It's going to sit in the mix much, much better now. Let's unsolo it and put it back in the mix, make sure it fits. And I will also name it and color it. I love working in score order. I typically keep my drums at the top, and then my bass, and then my rhythm section instruments, and then at the bottom I'll put my leads or my solos, like vocals. Okay, I have a little bit of a conflict here. If I listen to my bass and my electric guitar together, they're both very, very thick in the bottom end because of that octaver I put on the electric guitar. They're both consuming a lot of that low end space, and now I'd like to separate them a little bit and clear them out. That's easily done. On my electric guitar track, the green one, after Guitar Rig, let's insert another a Masterworks equaliser plugin. It's an Oxford emulation, and we can roll off some of the low end of the electric guitar. This is going to allow the bass guitar to occupy the very low end of the frequency, like this. And the electric guitar, it's still playing a low part, but it's no longer taking up all of those low frequencies below 100 hertz. And now when I put them together, they can coexist quite a bit more. And here's my full mix again. Let's move on with another part of the orchestration. I have an idea for a counter melody I'd like to add. So for that, let's go to our next track, and I'm going to pull up Mach 5 and go see if I can find a piano. But again, thinking in terms of character, not just any piano. Let's see if we can find something old and musty and upright and maybe a real detuned piano. And I have an idea for a counter melody part that I'd like to record in MIDI here. So let me rewind to the beginning of this loop, and here we go, there's a piano. Let me lay it in there. Okay, so there's my piano counter melody. I noticed that very first note, it preceded the bar line a little bit, so it's not going to get triggered in the loop. Let's fix that just by a hard quantize. Now it's inside my 8-bar loop, and it'll work great. Let's solo that piano and see what that needs. I can hear it's pretty dry right now. I think I'd like to let it sit in the space a little bit more. So I'm going to go to a third-party plugin. One of my favorite esoteric delays is the PSP-85, made by the Polish company PSP. They make some wonderful stuff. And I'm just going to pull up a preset here, do something interesting with it. Let's hear what it sounds like. Pull back the dry-wet mix a little bit. So that's acting like a beautiful, like really interesting chimey part. I'm going to make a little tweak to it EQ-wise. I'm going to insert another EQ after the PSP-85, and I'm going to boost its high end very gently. This is just going to let it ping a little bit more, like a bell, and it's going to help it cut through the mix more. Now when I put it back in my mix, I can actually turn down the piano. Okay, so let's name that piano. At this point, I've got most of the top end and the bottom end happening in this mix, but I don't have a lot in the mid-range. So what I'd like to do is now add a second guitar part and take it in a different direction. I'm going to do the same as I did before and import a dry electric guitar part. And let's solo it, see what it sounds like raw, and then see what we're going to do with it. Okay, with this, let's go in a different direction. Let's add a little bit of fuzz using the Diamond Drive plugin that comes with DP. and then pass it through an AC30 amp, also a DP plugin, and let's add a little bit of tremolo to that. And then finally, let's pass it through this fantastic cabinet simulator called Live Room G. Live Room G allows you to emulate tons of different types of cabinets and mic them in different ways. So I'm liking the way it sounds the way it is, but let's add, let's say, another microphone perspective, like a far omni, for example. That's going to pop up in my visual field, and let's pan the two mics out a little bit so that this guitar can have a little bit more of a stereo space around it. And now, let's put it back in the mix and hear how it sounds. And I'll give it the same color as the other electric guitar so that those two tracks stay together. I did hear a little bit of a problem here. The last few notes of that guitar, they were rushing a little bit. I didn't play them very accurately. If I look at my sequence editor here, I can actually see this peak right here. That's a little bit before the bar line. It really should be on that red line. This one belongs on this red line. This one you can barely tell, but it is a note. Really belongs on that blue line. And this one is early too. So basically, I played a little riff that was a little bit rushed. That's very easily fixed in the sequence editor. I'm going to hold down my C key, and that gives me a temporary scissors tool where I can make an incision, let's say right here and right here. And once I've done that, I can release the C key to get back to my regular pointer, hold down the comma key to pull out the slip tool, and now I can simply slip that audio into place where it needs to be. So if I move those closer to the bar lines where I really wanted them to be, now I've got a little problem that I created an edit that might result in a pop. So let's fix that by quickly just crossfading over those edit points so that no one can ever tell I did this. So now let's have a listen to make sure that that edit is clean. Great. And now those notes are no longer rushing, and I feel a whole lot better about that groove. Okay, one more element before we get to the vocals. I'd love to give this song a little bit more of an epic feel. So I'd like to add some strings, but I've actually got ideas for two different string parts. We could add, let's say, a first string part, and we'll use Mach 5 for this again. Just holding down a pad. We'll just fill up the mid-range to warm up the sound overall. So I'll go into my Mach 5 factory library, pull up some strings, find the all strings patch. Let me play it from my keyboard. Something like that will work great. So let's hit record and record in the string pad part. See, I'm kind of mixing as I go, mixing with one hand, playing with the other, so I can just tuck that in space where I want it to be. Now, I've got an idea for a second string part. I'd like it to double the piano counter melody, so we have some nice soaring strings on top. Let's use the same strings patch again, but the beauty of doing this is I'm going to have two faders in my mixing board, so later in this mix, as I put the final touches on it, I'll be able to adjust the string pad and the string lead independently. Let me drop this into record and record those notes. Here it comes. My string lead. Let's name these tracks. I'll call it strings pad and strings lead. And the virtual instrument track can be called simply strings. Give them a color. I can tell the strings are actually slightly, a little more, they're flat compared to the piano. Let me retune Mach 5 globally, just the strings a little bit, so they sit in with the piano a little bit better. I think we're just about done with our instrumental mix. Now, I mentioned earlier that Rachel and I never actually met in person to work on this. All our collaboration was done remotely. So as I was working on a piece of the song, like this, for example, once I hit a stopping point, I would select everything. I'd hit my bounce command, bounce it to an MP3. Digital Performer does a faster than real-time bounce, so in a matter of seconds, I've got an MP3 file of exactly what I just did, which I can email or Dropbox or whatever over to her to get her thoughts. So we did this a bunch of times, and we kind of developed this collaboration until we felt like the song sounded the way we wanted it, and it was built out from start to finish. At that point, we decided, okay, we're pretty much there. It's time to record vocals. I never met up with her to record the vocals. She recorded them in her own studio, and she sent me the files via Dropbox. So what I'd like to do now is import her raw vocal files just the way she sent them to me, and let's take a look at how we can make them fit into this master sequence and some of the techniques we might use for mixing these vocals. So right off the bat, let's do a little bit of organizational housekeeping. I can see she sent me 2 lead vocal tracks, which looks like they're doubles of each other. So I'll give them one color. And she's got 6 background vocals tracks. Let's give them a related color so they kind of stay together and my eye associates them. Let's solo all of them and just see what they sound like.
What if I disappear, disappear? What if I fall?
They sound pretty good. They're very direct. They're very raw. She hasn't done anything to them. No reverb, no nothing. It looks like they're probably all recorded in pairs. Let's space them out in the stereo field just so it's a more interesting ensemble to listen to. I'm picking some different spots. Okay, let's start by soloing her lead vocal and seeing what it needs.
Disappear, disappear. What if I fall?
Okay, you can even see right there where my mouse is. That is a big difference between some of her loud notes and some of her quiet notes. We're going to need to smooth out these vocals. So I'm going to pull out my trusty Masterworks leveler again, and I'm going to apply it to that lead vocal track that we were just listening to. I'll pull up a basic Radio Rider preset, and let's have a listen to this.
Disappear, disappear.
Okay, this one's only taking about 3 or 4 dB off, but that's actually going to work great because I like to be a little more gentle on vocals, unless I'm going for a specific effect. That's much better. As a shortcut, I'm going to option drag that Masterworks leveler to all of my vocal tracks. This is going to apply the exact same compression settings to every single vocal track in the sequence, saving me a lot of time. So now, if I were to solo and play it, it should all be quite a bit smoother to listen to.
Disappear, disappear. What if I fall?
It's actually playing a lot smoother now than it did a minute ago. Her vocals are really, really rough, but that's part of the unique quality of her voice. I'm adamant this is not the kind of song I'd want to auto-tune to perfection. It's nice, kind of left a little bit ragged and with instruments that are mostly in tune, but they have occasional quirks to them. I think that's going to sound great. We really have to treat these vocals a little bit, though, because they're bone dry, and the instrumental part is much more roomy and vibey and ambient. So what I'd like to do is bus all of the vocal tracks to a new unused bus. So I'm going to use the sends in my mixer to do this. I'm going to create a new aux track via a new stereo bundle. I can see that bus 910 is not in use, so let's use that. And I'm going to option drag this, too, so I can get bus sends across every vocal channel. So what this is doing, it's sending a copy of every single individual vocal channel out through bus 910, which is now coming up in this new pink aux track, which has input bus 910. This is going to enable me on this pink track to insert a reverb, and I'm going to choose DP's Proverb, which is a wonderful convolution reverb. Let's play it, and I'll tweak it out a little bit and balance things.
Disappear, disappear. What if I fall?
Okay, it's big and it's cavernous. So one thing I'd like to do is, I don't like my reverbs to be muddy. Let's subtract some of the low gain, some of the real low end off the reverb, and it's a little too cavernous. Let's shorten the length of this reverb like that. And now we should be in a better place to mix in this reverb against the vocals.
Would anything be the same? Everything's changed.
Okay, I'm going to rename my pink track Vocal Verb. One thing I'd really love now is I just love some additional subtle vocal layers going on, and I have a trick for that. I'm going to take my Vocal Verb track and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to rename its duplicate to be Vocal Delay. I'm going to come back to my mixer, and on the new Vocal Delay track, I'm going to remove the proverb, and I'm going to go back to that esoteric delay that I was using earlier, the PSP-85, pull up a funky preset here maybe. I can turn it to 100% wet, because by doing this, my new delay is coming up on this channel, my reverb that I just tweaked out is coming up on this channel, and all of my individual vocal tracks are still dry on those channels. So I have full control over blending them as I wish. So let's have a listen to it now with a vocal delay, which I'll exaggerate so you can hear what it sounds like.
Disappear, disappear. What if I fall? Would anything be the
So that's a really nice kind of vocal aura around all those vocal tracks. I do want to duck some of those background vocals so that the lead vocal stands out a little bit more.
Disappear, disappear. What if I
I'm just about ready to bring the band back in and work on the final stages of this mix, but I do need to do one last organizational thing. If I were to bring the band back in right now, I really have no good control over whether my vocals overall may be too loud or too quiet. What I'd like to do is submix them. And what I'm going to do is send all my vocals out through a new unused bus pair. Let's say bus 1112. Now there's a shortcut for this. If I were to select all of my vocal tracks, including the verb and delay, there's a command in the studio menu called Audio Assignments that can instantly reassign all of them with one click. So now I'm going to assign all the outputs to bus 1112, and I'm going to send bus 1112 out to my surround mix for this demonstration here, and I'm going to rename my aux track to be vocals, and I use all caps, which is my personal shorthand for it being some kind of bus or submix. It's a sum of all the vocals. Now over here in the mixer, this is going to control everything about the vocals, and I'm not going to have to adjust 10 faders at once if I need to make overall vocal changes. So that's going to be a real help to me when I bring the band back in. One thing I noticed when I was listening to the vocals is there were a couple of plosives, some P's and B's, that when she sang them, they hit straight into the mic, like a puh, and it produced a big low-end thump. Let's get rid of them, and I'm just going to do it all at once by inserting an equalizer on the vocal track itself. And I'm going to do a low-end cut here. I can use a pretty steep filter just to get rid of all those low-end thumps. If I needed to do any other EQing on the vocals, this is the perfect place to do it. And let me smooth out the vocals one last time too by using an additional Masterworks leveler with a gentle preset like Radio Rider. So now, not only are my individual vocal tracks being compressed, but my vocal stem overall is getting another layer of subtle compression, and it's going to fit in the mix a whole lot better now. So one last listen to the vocals, and then I'll unmute all the instruments, and let's put this mix back together.
What if I disappear, disappear?
Here's the vocals, and here's the band.
What if I fall? Anything be the same? Everything's changed. What if I disappear, disappear?
Okay, and you can see that I just continue to kind of mix as we go and tweak things. The way I've done things, I retain full control over just about everything we've done. I haven't destroyed anything in the process. Everything has been tweaking on the go. Last step of working on this mix, I'd like to send it over to Rachel or another collaborator. I'd like to put a little bit of master bus compression on the mix overall. Now, if I was sending this to a mastering engineer, if it was the final version, I wouldn't do that. But in this case, I can. And I could use the Masterworks Leveler again, but I've got another favorite plugin. The PSP Vintage Warmer is a wonderful analog fattening compressor. So what I'm going to do is I've placed that on my master bus. I'm going to play the sequence. I'm going to tweak it out a little bit, and once I feel like it's tweaked, I'll bypass it so that you can hear the before and after effect of what the Vintage Warmer has done to this mix.
Disappear, disappear. What if I fall? Anything be the same. Everything's changed.
There's the after. Here's the before.
I'll disappear, disappear.
After.
What if I fall?
You can hear that what that compressor is doing, it's not just adding loudness, it's compressing the dynamics slightly, and it's adding some glue that makes the instruments and the vocals all fit together a whole lot better. And it's also preventing it from clipping because I've got my brick wall setting on, so it's not going to overload. And now, I'm just about done with this mix. If I want to send it to my collaborator, again, I can select it all, hit a bounce, and in seconds have a file ready to go. And that is the production process that was used for this song. You've just witnessed probably about a month of work condensed into 30 minutes. What I'd love to do now is I'm going to re-enable that original session that you saw at the beginning of this, get rid of all this new stuff, and play you the full song from start to finish so that you can hear how all of these elements fit in to the song as a whole. Here goes.
What if I disappear and disappear? What if I fall? Would I ever make it back at all? Dream and fade and stand. It's almost funny now. It's almost funny now. What if I disappear, disappear? What if I fall? Would anything be the same? Everything's changed. Everything's changed. How does it happen? The moment it turns, I wish to see clearly. Backfire burns. Dream and fade and standing here. It's almost funny now. It's almost funny now. What if I disappear, disappear? What if I fall? Would anything be the same? Everything's changed. What if I run away, run away, run away when up in flames? How long can I hold on? Everything's changed. Everything's changed. Everything's changed.
And again, that's a look at a month of work condensed into 30 minutes. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Thank you. I'm David Doss from MOTU. I'll be around to answer any questions afterwards if you have them. Thanks.